All right. Well, good afternoon, everybody. I wanted to do this video because I've seen the comments, right? I've seen the posts on social media. A lot of people calling out the Lions, not having a defense and to start buying through free agency, or it's a bust in 2024. I'm sorry, but I really have to disagree. From my opinion, I think that what I'm going to do here is I'm going to point out that you're partially right. But if you think that the Lions get where they get in 3 seasons through free agency alone, you are completely missing a huge point and a significant hurdle to that method. Let me break it down a little bit. One, you have to have money to buy through free agency. This will be the first season that the Lions will actually have some money and hardly any dead cap. If you look at what they did in 2021 and 2022, their dead cap was like 25 and 65 million in both of those years. Crazy numbers. How are you going to have money when you have more in dead cap than you do in available cash? 2, if the Lions don't build this core, you will never, ever, ever sustain a long-term rebuilding process and turn it into sustained success. 3, if you don't bring in these young guys through the draft to shape, to mold, to develop, you won't have that sustained success in your systems. And what I mean by that is you build these systems out to train guys the way that you want them to play. In an offensive or defensive scheme, you want these guys coming up through your systems in your training program so they know how to do what you want them to do. The goal is that you have a very good head coach and, assistant coaches, defensive coordinator, offensive coordinator. They're actually really good at their job that can take that development to the next level. And then the product on the field actually works. 4th point is I believe that this is bigger than just a bunch of hot air and keyboard warriors that are passionately airing out their frustrations of not being in the Super Bowl, because clearly if the Lions were in the Super Bowl, I think that we would have beat both teams. We beat the 49ers. We had them beat, fell apart, but I don't think that's because of free agency. I think that's because of a lack of defensive scheme that was, utilized improperly in the second half of the game. You have to be realistic at some point and face the fact that maybe you just don't understand how a franchise really operates, how it works financially and fundamentally. There's a lot more to this than just all the surface level stuff. And I'm not saying that I know it all, because that would be false. I don't know it all. But you know me, and you know that what I do comes from a place of research, stats, analytics. So that is where we're going to start today. And I hope that, I can make this point understandable, because there's a lot kind of going on here. There's a lot that this video is going to really go over. But I really do feel that the Chiefs have been dominant, since 2013 now, when Andy Reid joined the Chiefs organization as the head coach. His method of drafting, player development, retainment of the players they draft, it really started with John Dorsey. And now that resides with Brett Veach, who's their general manager. The common denominator, though, with both of those guys is Andy Reid. And so his meteoric rise with the Chiefs and what they've been able to do over the last, 8, 9 seasons, it shows you that building through the draft works well and above all else. It should also make you very comfortable, and this is where this video ties into the Lions, that Brad Holmes is doing exactly what needs to be done. Building his team out for sustained success is what he wants. It's what he envisions. You have to start somewhere. You keep adding layer after layer after layer. And before we look a little deeper to what I mean by that, I think it's important to note that this is also exactly what Brad Holmes is trying to do. He is trying to get this team, this organization, this franchise to the level of these bigger dogs like the Chiefs. It takes time. But he's putting a premium on building a core through the draft. And then he supplements through free agency, which, as I said earlier, it takes time because you need the money, you need the financials. They had to clean all of that up. How many of you have heard me say we were half a season away? I wasn't lying, was I? We needed this next draft to get to where we wanted to get. And that would have been the springboard to jump off of to propel this team to its future, which is where we are today. 3 playoff appearances, 2 wins, NFC title game. That is going to be the floor for this team moving forward. They are going to expect to be in the playoffs every single season. They will try and hopefully do win the NFC North every single season. So as long as we have the coaches that we have now. But if you take a look at the Chiefs, and again, there's some parity here. If you take a look at the Chiefs draft picks and their non-drafted free agents since 2016, or even back to 2013, I think that you'll be amazed at what you're going to find. So let's take a look at who had an impact on this Super Bowl. And were they drafted by the Chiefs or were they a free agent signing? So right away, what I'll tell you is this. Since 2013, the Chiefs currently have 29 players on the Super Bowl roster that they drafted. And in 2013, the only player that still remains on the team is Travis Kelce. Since 2016, I skipped 14 and 15 because there's nobody left on, from those two seasons. Since 2016, there's 28 players that remain on the Super Bowl winning roster from yesterday. And that player, only one, Chris Jones. Since 2017, I think you know the answer to this one, 26 players remain, Patrick Mahomes. Since 2018, 25 players remain, including Derek Nottie. Now, Derek Nottie, I believe, was on IR during this game. I don't think that he played. But the point is that he had an impact on this season with this roster. I don't remember when he got injured. 2019, 24 players remain, including Mecole Hardman, who I believe he left and then he came back this season. If I'm not mistaken, he was brought back to the team. I could be wrong. 2020, 23 players remain, including Michael Dana and Edwards-Helaire. So when it comes to filling out the roster, in free agency, the Chiefs mostly took offensive players in just about every free agency. And what I mean by free agency is other teams' players that were, that you're bringing in, not re-signing your own players. I'm talking about players that were not on the roster. They're coming from a different team. That is the true essence of free agency. Re-signing your own guys, extending your own guys, that's part of the process. But they really didn't take many defensive players. And even if they did, it might have been a couple of safeties. A few years that we'll recap, because the last 3-4 seasons is all that really matters here for free agency. 2020 and 2021, not much happening here. Nobody on the team now that they took back then, or they're an offensive player. 2022, they brought in Scantling as a wide receiver, Justin Reed, safety, and Deion Bush, safety. 2023, they brought in Juwan Taylor, offensive tackle, and Omenahu, defensive tackle, who I believe is on IR. So do you guys see where I'm going with this? Let's talk about the starters for a moment. These are all players that the Chiefs drafted since 2016, I think is the year that I went back to. And it's shocking when you look at the Super Bowl roster. Starters. I'm going to talk about starters. You got maybe second fiddle too, because, in some offensive schemes, obviously you're going to have more than one wide receiver out there or two. Patrick Mahomes, Isaiah Pacheco, Rashee Rice, Travis Kelce, Nick Allegretti, Creed Humphrey, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Sky Moore, Mecole Hardman, Noah Gray, Wanya Morris, Lucas Niang. Those are all players that the Chiefs had drafted that played yesterday. So out of the entire starting offense, there was only 5 players. Justin Watson, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, who was a free agent, right? Donovan Smith, Trey Smith, and Juwan Taylor. Those are the only 5 that started on the offensive side of the ball that the Chiefs did not draft. Now, I know what you're asking me right now. You're saying, but Will, the defense. The defense is what won. The defense is what matters. Chris Jones played out of his mind. Nick Bolton played out of his mind. I wouldn't say Chris Jones did. I mean, he had a couple of good plays, but Nick Bolton was the all-star yesterday. That guy was doing it. He was all over. I don't even think Chris Jones had a sack yesterday. I think he only had 4 tackles. But he did affect that third down that helped the Chiefs get the ball back. Force the 49ers into a field goal. But let's look at the starting defense. George Karlaftis, Chris Jones, Mike Dana, Willie Gay, Nick Bolton, L'Jarius Sneed, Trent McDuffie, Felix Uzoma, Leo Chenal, Joshua Williams, Jalen Watson. All of those guys are drafted by the Chiefs since 2016, and most of them since 2020. Only 4 guys were starters that were not drafted. So in total, you have 9 out of the starting 22 that were not drafted. 9. So less than 50% are free agents. And I would be willing to say that, out of these 9, I think Justin Watson had a pretty decent game yesterday. Let's take a look. 3 catches, 54 yards. But let's look at the 2 that they did draft. Travis Kelce and McCole Hardman. Travis Kelce, 9 balls, 93 yards. McCole Hardman, 3 balls, 57 yards. Rashee Rice, the guy that they just drafted this season, 6 balls, 39 yards. Isaiah Pacheco, a guy that they drafted a couple seasons ago, 6 balls, 33 yards. Noah Gray, who was drafted back in, 2021, 2 balls, 22 yards. Valdez Scantling, free agent, 3 balls, 20 yards. So I think you're getting my point here, right? The guys that they drafted, the guys that they developed are guys making the plays, winning this game. On the defensive side of the ball, let's take a look there real quick. Nick Bolton, number 1 leading tackler on the defense, 13 tackles, 1 tackle for loss, no sacks, drafted. Justin Reed. Oh, where is Justin Reed? Justin Reed, free agent, 9 tackles, half a sack. Mike Edwards, free agent, 7 tackles. Leo Chenal, 4th on the list, 6 tackles, 1 TFL, drafted. George Karlaftis, 5 tackles, half a sack. And I think he left the game early. I think he got injured. I'm not sure if he came back in. Willie Gay, drafted, 4 tackles. And so was George Karlaftis, by the way, drafted. Chris Jones, drafted, 3 tackles, 2 solo, no sacks, no TFLs. Trent McDuffie, drafted, 3 tackles, 2 solo, no sacks. Now, I'm not looking at his coverage grades and statistics here, but I will tell you right now that McDuffie, dude, played out of his mind yesterday. Clearly one of the best in the game. Guy has great coverage ability. But again, another drafted player, Mike Dana, Jalen Watson, Joshua Williams. So I think you guys get the point. What you are seeing here on the stat sheet, go and look at it. Matter of fact, here, let me share this on the screen with you so you can take a screenshot of it, and then you can go look for yourself. All right, so this is the starting offense. Those are all the guys that were drafted. This is the starting defense, and these are the guys that are all drafted. They're highlighted in yellow. And I think I'm about 99% accurate here. Quick research this morning just to make sure that everybody that was drafted, I mean, here's the drafts. All the guys in blue, those are guys that started, or played in the Super Bowl that were drafted that are still on the team. 2023, 6 out of 7 players. 2022, 7 out of 10 players. 2021, 4 out of 6 players. 2020, 5 out of 6 players. And it starts to slim down as you get older into the rosters because those players move on through free agency. Again, I think you guys are getting the point that I'm trying to make here, right? This team has been built through the draft. This is exactly what Brad Holmes is doing. Exactly. He's trying to build a core so that they have some, players to rely on that have come up through their systems. They know the team inside and out. They know the offense or the defense, whatever they're on. They're used to the coaching staff. They're used to the culture. They're great fits. Sometimes you bring guys in, they may not just bust out year one. It might take them a couple of seasons. That's okay. But we do expect that, your GM and your coach would make sure that you do have players that can play, that you're not just consistently waiting. But let me throw another wrench in the mix for you here, because I want to go back to what everyone's been talking about. You've got to spend money in free agency to have a great team. It's wrong. Partially wrong. Arizona Cardinals, how good did they do this season? Terrible season, right? Now, they signed 33 free agents this last season. 33. Now, a lot of them were more than likely their own players. They spent $71 million on those 33. So a lot of probably one-year deals, low on the totem pole guys, just filling out the roster. But the next team, Atlanta Falcons, so-so season, right? Below average. 31 free agents signed, spent $218 million. They didn't win a Super Bowl. Heck, I don't even think they made the playoffs, did they? How about the Raiders? 30 free agents, 176.6 million spent. Did they make the playoffs? Did they go to the Super Bowl? I don't think so. Here, let me give you one that really matters. One that might shock you a whole hell of a lot. How about them Bears? Let's talk about the Chicago Bears. Well, they spent $181.7 million on 21 free agents. 181.7 million on 21 free agents. Now, what should shock you is overall, they spent $354 million in 2023. I know it's more than the cap. It's lifetime of the contracts. $354 million spent in 2023, or will be spent over the life of the contracts. How'd those Bears do? Aren't they picking like 5, 8, 9, somewhere in there? I don't remember. Not good. They'll get another good draft pick this year. But they went and bought a ton of defensive help. Linebacker Tremaine Edmonds, $72 million. Linebacker TJ Edwards, $19.5 million. Defensive end DeMarcus Walker, $7 million. Defensive tackle Andrew Billings, 1-year prove-it deal. So they went out and got 3 pretty good defensive players. Didn't do squat this year. Now they gave us a tough time in one of the games, but again, that doesn't matter. What matters is what they do the rest of the season. Let's look at another team that spent a ton of money. New York Giants. This is insane. They spent $541.7 million this season over the life of the contracts. $541.7 million. How did they do this season? Not very good, huh? Are you surprised? You should be surprised, right? Because you buy through the free agency, and that's what matters. That's the only thing that matters. Now, I'm not saying I don't want the Lions to get a few players in free agency, but what I'm saying is it has to be right. You just can't go out and spend $100 million on somebody and then sit back and hope for the best. Who did they bring in this year that made a difference? Let's talk about the Giants for just a moment. Linebacker Bobby Okereke, $40 million over 4 years. Tight end Darren Waller via trade. Saquon Barkley, franchise tag. They extended Daniel Jones, $160 million. So you could take $160 million off the top, and they still spent close to $400 million this season over the life of the contract. They brought an outside linebacker in, Jihad Ward. A handful of wide receivers. Defensive lineman Rakim Nunez Roches for $12 million. Didn't help them. They didn't go anywhere. Let's look at a couple more. Let's see who else spent a ton of money. How about the Bengals? $573.1 million. Free agency, they only spent $108 million, though. They only signed 13 guys. So I think that, they had a decent season. Obviously, Burrow got injured, and that derailed them. But they were having a decent season when he was in. But again, they didn't make it to the Super Bowl. The Eagles, $522 million. So there's a comparison for you. The Eagles went out and spent a ton of money. They brought in 21 free agents, or signed 21 free agents for $101.6 million. They were doing great. And then the wheels fell off. So spending money in free agency, bringing guys in free agency does not guarantee you a darn thing, because they were the lock to go win the Super Bowl by week 8. They were the lock. And then the Lions came, who spent squat in free agency. How much did we spend? Well, the Lions spent $254.8 million. Again, over the life of the contracts. Now in free agency, they brought in 24 or re-signed 24 guys, spent $117.275 million. And we just made it to the NFC title game. Now, where do we rank on overall spending in free agency compared to all the other teams? Let's take a look. We 20th overall. So we spent more money than 10 other teams, or 12 other teams, and made it to the NFC title game. Now, I could go through all of these. This information is available on SpoTrack. Here, I will share it just so that you can see what I'm reading here. All right, there you go. So this is what I'm looking at here. It tells you exactly everything about these teams and what they did. This is available on Spotrac. It's called NFL Offseason Spending and Savings. So what's the overall point that I'm trying to make here? The overall point that I'm trying to make is calm the F down. Yes, we belonged in the Super Bowl. Yes, I believe that we would have beat both of these teams that showed up that day, yesterday. Yeah, we fell apart in the NFC title game in the second half. And you could blame the defense, but you know what? You had multiple drops and a fumble. So you can blame both sides. You know, if Josh Reynolds catches that ball and JAHMYR GIBBS doesn't fumble, we win that game. And yes, if the defense doesn't let up 17 points in the third quarter, we win that game. But what I'm trying to drive into your minds is let Brad Holmes do what he does. We're not going to agree with everything. We're not. And I get it. All of us have our own opinions of who we like and who we love to see on the team and what makes sense. You know what? That's just called being human. Everyone has their own opinion, just like everyone has a, you know what? Now, what I do from, a media perspective and analysis perspective is I just try to bring you guys some great content. I try to break things down to make it fun, enjoyable, bring you guys some stats and analytics, and then compile it all with some, good opinions and other research. This is just another way for me to do that and explain to you guys that we're going to have some things that we don't like. We're going to go through periods, with this team throughout the season that are going to be upsetting or frustrating, where you're going to doubt, the direction of the team. But what I will tell you is this: the Chiefs have been extremely dominant since 2013. They've had, I think, more than 11 wins or more since 2013. A lot of seasons with 12 wins. They've been, to 5 Super Bowls now? Something like that in the last 10 seasons. That could be wrong. Strike that. I think that's wrong. But I at least know that Mahomes has won 2 in a row, and he's got 3 total. Obviously, the most successful quarterback in the league right now. And you want to know something else? You know who's in the top 3 for playoff wins and appearances? Jared Goff in that same time frame. So I think that Brad Holmes is doing things right. Yes, we're not going to like everything. It's okay. But you know what I am going to do? I'm going to continue to show you guys some free agency stuff. I'm going to continue to show you guys all of the draft picks that I like and bring some good information. Last year, I've said it a few times in the last week, I hit on a ton of picks and a ton of calls. Yesterday, I called the tie in the Super Bowl before the game started. And I also said that the Chiefs would win. Now, I had no clue that it would be a tie, but it was a hell of a guess, right? I thought it would be a close game, and I thought the Chiefs would win. That's all that really mattered. But it all comes from a place of research. And if you don't have the time to spend hundreds, if not thousands of hours of watching tape and reading articles and traveling and doing everything that's required to be a journalist or to bring you good content, then I don't know why you'd be so willing to throw everybody else under the bus. Because if you haven't done the research, you don't know. You're only listening to what other people are saying. And I guess I would question as to who you're listening to, because there's a lot of people out there that just like to throw crap up against the wall and see what sticks. They just feed you nonsense over and over and over. It's great for entertainment, but if you want the real information, try to stick around right here on Rockdown Podcast Network. I promise you, it's not always serious, but we try to bring you the honest, truthful, and transparent opinions and research and stats and analytics and facts. Really high quality opinions based on facts to help paint a good picture about your team and about what's going on in the NFL. So, and if you want more, join us tomorrow morning in a Rockdown Syndicate, 8:30 in the morning. Derek should be back in the morning, and I'm sure we're going to talk a little bit about the Super Bowl, some free agency, where this team's heading, and whatever else seems to pop up. But anyway, I appreciate y'all for taking some time to watch this video. Just settle down, relax. Things are going to be fine. The Lions are going to do great this season. I called yesterday, too, that the Lions are going to the Super Bowl in 2024. So hopefully yesterday is a 3-for-3 on target prediction day. We'll see. But that's all for today. We'll see y'all later. Go on Pride. Go Detroit Lions. You take care. Bye-bye.